Hello, my name is Keith Edwards. I'm an instructor for Skyline Advanced Technology Services, and I'd like to talk to you today about taking tests. So many of the people who are taking Cisco type classes, which I have taught for a very long time, are interested in taking the test, which may or may not apply to that course or some other line of study. So I thought I would let you know some of the test taking hints that I try to apply, if I'm allowed, when I'm taking a test. We're going to start by talking about preparation. Then we're going to talk about strategies you use walking into the test. Then we're going to talk about strategies you can use during the test. And we're going to finish with talking about strategies to use when you're walking out of the test in case you did not pass it. So let's talk about preparation to begin with. Materials. Obviously, you need study materials. What kind of study materials do you need? Well, of course, if you are taking the official course from Cisco, those are really great study materials. So study them. The things that make those materials great are not just the information. What's also great is in most Cisco courses, at the end of every module, there will be a series of test questions. I suggest you become very well versed in those questions and answers. But furthermore, it's the language. It's the syntax and the type of language they use in those questions. It might not be the way you or I would describe something. Therefore, to see these questions on a test may throw you for a loop unless you have familiarized yourself with the type of language these people like to use ahead of time. Now, you may not know this, but the policy within Cisco is to present the required knowledge for a certification to a group of course writers, and also present that same list to a group of test writers. The course writers and the test writers do not talk. Therefore, you cannot expect the course to precisely tell you what's going to be on the test. The course covers certain subject matters, the test covers certain subject matters, but the questions at the end of the chapter may well not be the exact questions that are on the test. But the syntax, you'll see that these people on both sides use similar terminology. Because the course materials may not teach you everything that's on the test, you may need to buy some other materials. So maybe somebody has written a book that they've sold through Cisco Press or some other vendor. You may find it very, very valuable, and you may talk to your colleagues or friends or other people who have taken the test as to what other materials might be useful to study before taking the test. When it comes to labs, it's also important, if you've taken the course, it's massively important to do all the labs in the course. Because again, it's going to be syntactically very similar to what you'll see on the test, though not necessarily identical. So it's very important to get your hands on some type of test labs, and the best ones, the most highly recommended ones, are the ones offered by Cisco on Cisco's website or through the course materials when you've taken a course through Cisco. There are other companies who offer some lab environments and test labs, etc. The moral to the story is to get good at it and know how to do it and be familiar with the language. Be familiar with the language. So you're not trying to figure out the terminology and then trying to figure out the answer to the question. Okay? Have that terminology just completely learned so that you can read that question and have a very good idea of exactly what they're having you look for and not also having to interpret. Okay? So practice and familiarity, because speed matters. So the more practiced and more familiar you are with the technologies and the labs and the terminology, the faster you will be able to complete the labs, therefore not leaving some labs undone. Now, when I'm going to take a test, I study, study, study. I go over the materials I told you about. But frequently there will be something that I just have a hard time getting through my head. So what am I supposed to do? I fear that that thing is going to be on the test, but I've got some kind of a mental block or something stopping me from being able to remember that thing or that answer or the items in an answer. So I have strategies for when I walk in. Okay? My favorite strategy is to employ my short-term memory and to use mnemonics. Okay? So for example, back in the day when I took a sniffer test, I had a hard time remembering the names of the top 3 letters of the OSI model. Okay? And so before I took the test, I said to myself, wait a minute, the names of those top 3 letters spell out apps. The top 3 layers are application, presentation, and session. That spells apps. So walking into the test, going through my mind, I had apps. Apps. Remember, apps. Okay? So that's the type of thing you can do. If there's a thing, then you study, as it says here, study till the last moment. Study till the last moment. I have, on occasion, signed in to take the test. So I've signed the sheet and I put my name down and it said, that the arrival time of a certain time. I do that, they get the picture, and then I say, I'll be right back. And I go out in the next room and I study those last minute things, which I will have written down. Okay, I know there's things that I'm having a hard time getting, so I'll have them on some type of a note that says these are the things, and I will put those things in short-term memory. You could call that thing that I have there a cheat sheet, but I'm not actually cheating because I'm not using it in the test. I'm using it before the test. So I read that thing and I put as much of that in my short-term memory as I can. And of course, the most efficient way to do that kind of thing is with mnemonics. So I study at the last moment, then I walk in and I say, okay, I'm ready to take the test. And whatever the person says who's leading me to my chair, I do my best to ignore them. I follow them into the room and I sit down, but in my head, I'm saying apps, apps, apps. Or maybe I'm thinking about the other thing you see here, B2E9011. B2E9011. What's the administrative distance? You see what I mean? The B is for BGP and the administrative distance is 20. EIGRP is 90 and OSPF is 110. So if I remember B2E9011, B2E9011, if I remember that, then when I sit down, I can write it down on the scrap paper they give you. I can write it down, and now I don't have to run this through my head all the time while I'm taking the test. Now I've created legally, right, without breaking any rules, I've carried this knowledge in with me. My hands are bare. There's no intelligent device on my wrist. Those things are against the rules, but I've carried this in with me. And as soon as I'm allowed to, I write down the information or the mnemonic on that scratch pad they give you. Now I've got the mnemonic written down and available to me for when I start the test. Here's a favorite thing I do in a cheat sheet. If I'm going to do subnetting, again, when I walk in, before I start the test, if I'm going to do subnetting, I'm going to write this. Why? Because it's the values of a byte. So the bit values in a byte are, as you see here, 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1. I know that if I'm subnetting and I need some of these bits coming from the left, so let's call this the far right octet, that I know my subnet mask is 255.255.255. What? So if I need 14 hosts, or say 10 hosts, then I know I'll draw my subnet mask right here. And I know that the last octet I will call 240. I don't have to take the time during the test to do the math. I write this down before the timer starts. And that way, if I have to refer to it, bam, I've just saved myself some time. And these last numbers, as you probably know, are the number of bits in the subnet mask. So if I'm in the 4th octet and I use an additional 1 bit, then it's a 25-bit subnet mask. Okay, so these are little shortcuts you can write down. And again, I call it a cheat sheet, but you're not cheating. It's knowledge you carried in. It's a shortcut you created for yourself so as to not eat up time. Okay, and as I said, study till the last moment. And frequently, I mean, things can be on a notepad, things can be on a Word document in your computer, or there can be some lesson or something that you wanted to keep in mind. Study till the last moment. Put the last breadcrumbs, the last little bits in short-term memory, and then don't let anybody disturb your short-term memory. The last time I took a test, I actually went to a Pearson VUE test center. Usually I'm going to community colleges. But the last time I went to a Pearson VUE test center, they wouldn't let me sign in and then study. No, once you sign in, you have to take the test. Oh, well, let me go study and then I'll sign in. So then I signed in, and there was more crap that I wanted to do, right? More stuff than I wanted to do because I didn't want to disturb my short-term memory, but they didn't give me a choice. So then I went and sat down, and I started writing on the scratch pad. And the lady said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm writing on the scratch pad." She said, "You can't write on the scratch pad till you take the test." I said, "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've been writing on the scratch pad the entire time." She said, "I'm sorry, you can't write on the scratch pad till you begin the test." So I said, "Okay." At the beginning of the test, there is the ability to see the syntax of questions. It's the practice exam thing, so that you can get familiar with the syntax of the questions. I started that. It doesn't take any time off of your actual test. So I started that, and then I wrote the things on the scratch pad. When it comes to test familiarity, there are practice materials. Again, you could use the materials you got when you took the course. You may purchase study materials. There's also example test questions and things on Cisco's website. They give practice questions on the website. It's so helpful, again, for the comfort level. Familiarity with syntax, familiarity with the mechanics of the test. And it really just helps your entire comfort level when you go through those things and you've got it. You know how to use it. And who knows? There may be, coincidentally, on Cisco's website, some actual questions that they put on the test that they're putting in the practice exam. So you're not doing something that they would frown upon. They're putting it on their website. Okay? And then, as I said at the beginning of the test, they will walk you through, if you choose to take it, the exam tutorial, it's called. They will walk you through all of the test syntaxes. So that, I mean, if you've done it if you've never done it and you're doing it for the first time, you might go, what are they expecting here? So if you go through the exam tutorial, they'll spell it out. They'll show you how. All right. And again, that's the time when the last time I took the test, I put the things on my scratch pad because it didn't count against my test time, but I was already involved in the material, so the people at the test center didn't complain about it. Remember, the test is timed. But the questions are not scored equally. So counting the number of questions you're comfortable with and the number of questions you're not comfortable with is not going to help you. Counting the number you're sure you got right and the ones you're not sure of, not going to help you. Okay? Don't even bother. They are not scored equally. Also, if they tell you there are 55 questions on this test, but they give you a question where they ask you 4 questions within a question, I know that I used to think, wait a minute, that's not 55 if this one is actually 4. They do make allowances for that. So don't let it get you down. The last thing you want to do is to let anything bother you or make you go off task or think off task during the test. Stay on task. You should be so familiar with the material that the multiple choice questions are easy. Okay? For the most part, if you're going to get, let's say on a 55 question test, let's say you get 45 multiple choice questions. They should be easy. You should be able to look at them because of familiarity and knowledge. You should be able to look at them and go click, 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 and they'll tell you choose 2, choose 1. I don't even think they'll let you go to another question if you haven't selected the correct number of answers. But be careful of it. Okay? So answer multiple choice questions correctly. I'm not saying be careless. I'm pointing out to you, don't be careless, but get her done. Okay? Limit the time you spend on a lab. Over the years, I've had many students tell me they got to a lab question and they took a half hour to 45 minutes to get that lab question done. Not worth it. Not worth it. Yes, you should open up available time with your multiple choice questions, but you should be able to get a lab done in probably 7 minutes or less. Okay? You should be familiar enough with it that you should be able to get most lab questions done in 7 minutes or less. Now, again, if it's one that has 4 different parts, that's a little bit different, right? You could give yourself more time. But if you're spending a half hour on a test, you should have moved on a long time ago. On one question, you should have moved on a long time ago. So limit time spent on any one question, whether it's a lab question or an actual question. Okay, limit your time. And how do you help do that? Well, like I told you with the IP subnetting thing, if you can create shortcuts that'll help you figure things out faster, right? That's how I can help to limit my time and give myself more time for other questions. When it comes to going back, people often ask me this. You cannot go back in a Cisco test. If you look at question 3 and it has you stumped, and then question 5 answers it, tough. You cannot go back. Sorry, but that's the way it is. So that's one issue. Another thing is you see something on the test and they say, like in a lab situation, create this configuration or troubleshoot this configuration. One sneaky thing I've seen in the past is there'll be another device of the same type in that lab that has that configuration correctly. It gives you the opportunity to stare and compare. It's so helpful. One of the things is if there's a thing they want you to configure like in a router, it might be 5 lines, 5 or 6 lines of configuration. And you're worried, do I have it all right? Is all the syntax right? Think in terms of something like routing protocols and reverse subnet masking or wildcard masking, right? You might be worried that you've got it wrong. But if there's another router that's doing the same technology, of course the settings would not be identical, but if it's doing the same technology, then it's probably going to give you all the exact correct syntax with the variations of the individual networks or whatever that you're at. But the syntax is there. So stare and compare turns out to be a really valuable thing on some of these tests. They put questions in the test that might confuse you, or maybe some answers you're not familiar with. There might be something that you're not happy about or happy to see, or you feel like you should have studied, but now you're unsure. Don't let it freak you out. Don't let it freak you out. The last thing you want to do is lose control of your logical mind because you're upset. Being upset will just hurt you. Okay? So don't let it get you down. Okay? You have to drive on, do your best, and you never know. When I took that last test, when I got to the end, I had a fair expectation that they were going to say, "We're sorry. You have failed the test." Guess what it said? "Congratulations," and I had passed it with flying colors. So don't assume you know the outcome of the test until you know it for sure. Therefore, don't let it freak you out. Okay? And use the same logic about going back. Use it going forward. Question 3, in this case, shows a technology or shows a bunch of settings. Like look in the example to the right. Maybe they're trying to ask you some question about diffserv code point AF values. So they're asking you about which statement specifies DSCP AF23. Okay? But the thing is, they've shown you a class map and policy map configuration along with how you apply it to an interface. They've shown it all to you. So this is an opportunity to go, aha. In case they ask me to create a class map, policy map, and apply it to an interface, I'll jot this down on my scratch pad. And by the way, they'll give you more scratch pad if you run out. Okay? This is an opportunity. In case this comes up later, I will now have used what I got earlier in the test to help me for later in the test. Obviously, you have to be conscious of time. But it's like using the going back logic, but going forwards. If you say to yourself, I don't know this syntax by heart, lo and behold, they gave me a gift. Use it. Another thing they do is to throw out distractors. It's a little cruel, but they do it. What they'll do is they'll give you a question that doesn't really have anything to do with the depth of the subject you're trying to take a test on or the subject you're taking a test on. It's a question out of left field. For example, look what we see on the right. We see that we're taking a QoS test, but it's asking a really nasty question about the administrative distance values for routing protocols when they're not being used as they're designed. What does that have to do with QoS? Well, nothing. It's a distractor. It's them trying to get you upset. Remember how I said don't be upset? Well, I know that they try to upset you. Okay? So don't let it. If you see that question, if you've studied like crazy, and you're very familiar with the subject matter, and you see a question that's really out of left field, okay? It was never maybe indicated as the subject matter, or it's in much greater depth, and you just think to yourself, I have never had any clue that I should know that for this test. Don't freak out, okay? The purpose of the distractor is to freak you out as a judgment about whether or not you really know the subject matter of the test. The cool thing is, distractors are not counted. They're not counted. They don't count them against you. Okay? So if it's pretty far out in left field, and you look at it in all the materials you've studied, you've never seen anything like it. You have the opportunity to go, don't do it. Don't do it. Look at it, do your best, apply logic, and then drive on. Because the chances are that was a distractor and it's not going to count against you at all. Use the test as a learning opportunity. If you get into that test and you're unsure of yourself, watch closely the language. If the language they use to ask you questions upsets you, right? That's when you start familiarizing yourself with their syntax. And in the example you see on the right, write down subjects or questions that throw you or that you're unsure of. If I didn't know QoS and I saw the question you see on the right, you notice it's saying in the following configuration, which statement specifies DSCP AF23? And then you don't see AF23 down there. And you may say to yourself, what's AF, right? It stands for assured forwarding, but you may say to yourself, I don't know. Write it down on your scratch pad. After you've gotten that written down, you're unsure, you've written it down for future reference, but now look at it again and just try to apply logic. Is there something here this could be? Well, if it's DSCP AF23, I don't see how it could possibly match the 14 because it's such a bigger number. I don't see how it could possibly match the 15 because it's such a bigger number. So you might use that logic to narrow down a darn good guess. Try to, again, write it down as a future reference to study. But don't give up. Take what they call a guess. Take a wise guess. Okay? So I'm finished taking the test. What do I do now? During the test, I wrote questions I was unsure of on the notepad. I'm going to make myself mnemonics. How do I remember these things? So now I study my notepad. These are the things I was unsure of. These are the things that I think got me. These are the things that I think tripped me up. Put them in your head. And then stand up, walk out of that room, hand in your stuff to the lady, and bolt for your locker. They will have usually told you to put your stuff in a locker. Don't have a conversation with those people. Don't complain to those people. Don't say anything to those people that you don't have to. Make as quick a beeline to your locker as you can, where you have a paper notepad. And on that notepad, write down as many of the things that were on your notepad to study before you walked out of the test, right? The things you saw on the test that made you unsure, those things that you studied before you walked out, get them written down as fast as you can with no interruption, no disturbance. If you have to be rude, go ahead, because this stuff costs money. Okay? Get those things written down just as quickly as you can. Okay? So that you can study them before you retake the test. So use your short-term memory going in and use your short-term memory going out. The test should be a learning experience. So how do I learn from the test? Look at the test results that they print out for you. It tells you what your strong areas are and your weak areas. So that alone should help you to focus on, I need to study that more. Correlate the results with your notes. Is there something the results saw that you had a problem with that you hadn't annotated? Obviously, the answer is to study both before you go take the next test. But you use this so that when you study for the next test, you spend less time studying the strong areas and more time on the weak ones. If you saw things in the test, a considerable amount of things in the test, that you were not prepared for with the learning materials you had, consider getting other materials. Okay? Consider getting additional or different study materials. Before I took the first QoS test I had 4 sets of books. I had the course materials from the QoS course. I had a Cisco Press book. I had the router iOS architecture book so I could understand Cisco Express forwarding and some other things. And I also had a QoS book written by somebody else. If you take the test, you don't pass, and you feel like the study materials you had did not prepare you, get some other study materials. The end result is you're going to become more well-rounded. And really, Cisco wants you to be a well-rounded person. The idea of the test is to prove you are. Approach the test using every allowable advantage you can. Okay? Because these things, I think they're up to $400. So use every advantage you can. Okay? Preparation is essential, but allow yourself to be human and employ some tricks to overcome your weaknesses, like those short-term memory tricks. The test will almost always have distractors. They are meant to distract and upset you. Don't let them. Use the Cisco practice materials. They are critical for learning not just the subject, but the syntax and the language. So even if you didn't take the course from a Cisco learning partner, you can, as I said, you can see certain things on Cisco's website, like practice exams. So it'll still help you learn the syntax and language. And as I said, you may need to buy other practice materials or use other practice materials. Since the test writers and the course writers do not work together, time utilization is critical. Keep track. Don't waste too much time on low-value questions. Try to get to the point where you can answer multiple choice questions quickly and efficiently to allow yourself more time for other questions. If you pass, celebrate. Be happy. You earned it. But if you fail, make sure you have put yourself in a position to learn from the failure. Hopefully you have noted the subjects and questions which vexed you on your scratch pad. Then get to your notepad as quickly as possible after the test and jot as many things down from your scratch pad as possible so that you can be sure to study them and be prepared for the next time you take the test. Don't be upset if you have to take a test twice. That's the other thing I didn't put down, but it's not a bad thing. It's expensive, so hopefully your company is paying for it, right? But the thing to remember is take it, do your best the first time, but if you don't pass, ensure that you use it as a learning experience. It can be a really, really valuable learning experience. That's my advice. Have a good day, good luck, and we'll talk to you next time.